And hello and good morning. We are live. Nice to see you again today. I'm David Boles, and this is Boles.tv. BOLES.tv. Are closed captions working? I don't see them. Let me see what's going on here. There they are. Maybe it takes a little while for them to show up. It's a little freaky when you start talking and your captions aren't working. But everything's fine. Well, when you start up a stream in the morning, you never know what's going to hit you in the face. And you think everything's set up, everything's reliable. And then you fire up your music stream and you see that Slipstream is not there. Slip.stream. It's there, but there's no music there. No playlist. I think, okay, so my playlist's got deleted. That's fine. I'll go play a genre. I'll go play a mood station. And bingo, you go there, you click on the thing to play, and there's nothing there. So that's why you have backups. We have Monster Cat Gold, and we have Pretzel Rocks. We have 3 music affiliations for this live stream, and they're all commercial licenses, so we can stream and restream here on Boles.tv and replay on YouTube if we want to and reuse it elsewhere. So the lovely sounds you're hearing today are from Pretzel Rocks. I believe this is their chill station. And I am feeling a little bit chilly, so I think it's working. But if the levels aren't right, if it's a little too loud, if you can't hear me, if you can't hear the music, say something, because I'm not really used to streaming this way with Pretzel. A little behind-the-scenes investigation into the ongoing story of who cares about the live stream technicality problems. So we have news this morning, sort of depressing, from Israel. My lights went out. Saying, hey, we tested, we thought that a 4th shot of Pfizer would predict and protect you very, very well. I guess it goes this way. Boop. And Israel's leading the way on these vaccines. Most of their country is vaccinated, and they do a lot of great research. And they said, well, it looks like the 4th shot doesn't really do anything. It doesn't protect people from getting infected. And I had read a little bit about that a couple of weeks ago, that there's this thing called mRNA fatigue. And it goes on in your body, where you get 3 shots of the same sort of shot, and your body, by the 4th time, says, hey, wait a minute, I've seen this 3 times already. I processed it. I'm not doing it again. I already know what it is. So that's a little disconcerting, but they had news last week we reported here on Boles.tv that Pfizer are also working on an Omicron variant vaccine. New, which would work, I believe, to make that available in March. Or maybe they're done with it in March, and then it'll take 2 months, 6 months, I don't know, to get it approved for the sticking in the arm. So what else is news? Let's see what's happening in the world, spinning around us and making us slightly dizzy in the process. We have learned that planets get eaten by their own stars. And I read this article and I just was shocked by the whole idea of it. You think it might be the other way, that somehow a planet would be able to eat a star, but no, the stars are hungry. Current models of planet dynamics suggest that planets should spiral in toward their host stars as the stars evolve over time. particularly in the last 10% of the star's lifetime. And we're talking millions and billions of years, but it's still scary. This process also heats the planets, potentially causing their atmospheres to inflate. However, this stellar evolution will also cause the planets around a star to come closer to each other, increasing the likelihood that some of them will collide or even destabilize the entire planetary system. The wide variety of planet densities found in the study suggest that these planetary systems have been shaped through chaotic planet-to-planet interactions. This could also have resulted in unpredictable heating rates and timescales for these planets, giving them the wide range of densities we observe today. So there you go. We now know that sooner or later the Earth will be engulfed and swallowed by its star. And what is the main star that will do the swallowing? I don't know. Is it the sun? Is the sun a star or is the sun a planet? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But I do love talking about the topic, and I guess I should find out. Is the sun a star? See, someone's already asked this. They must have heard about this story. And we're waiting. Our sun is an ordinary star. Well, that won't do. Just one among hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. As the only star we can observe in detail, it provides a basis for our understanding of all stars. The sun is composed almost entirely of hydrogen and helium gas. Well, there you go. That's my prediction. Mark it on your calendar for 1,000,000 years from now. Maybe 2. We will be eaten by our own sun. That's my prediction. Write it down. Now, 23andMe, I believe in them a lot. I like what they're doing. I think they try hard, and sometimes they try just a little bit too hard. It seems like every day we get some email from them, some test. And we have sent them our spit a couple of times over the years, and they enhance it. There's 23andMe Plus that you pay a little bit extra for. I don't think it's... When I tried it, it was $50 extra a year, and I think now it's much lower than that. Maybe $19 a year. And it gives you extra insight into your DNA. And for some reason, this Neanderthal DNA, or Neanderthal, either one is correct, pronunciation, I guess it's a big thing, because they keep emailing me about it. Hey, David, you have more Neanderthal DNA than 8% of other customers. Neanderthals were prehistoric humans who interbred with modern humans before disappearing around 40,000 years ago. I guess that's a really important trait. I believe my wife has much more Neanderthal in her DNA than I do, and I guess that does make her special in the eyes of 23andMe, but they don't explain very well why it's important. Well, here they try. What does it mean? You have fewer than 2% Neanderthal DNA. You inherited a small amount of DNA from your Neanderthal ancestors. Out of the 7,462 variants we tested, we found 203 variants in your DNA that trace back to the Neanderthals. Altogether, your Neanderthal ancestry accounts for less than, should be fewer than, around 2% of your DNA. Okay, well, next. You have Neanderthal DNA that may influence your traits. This report highlights associations between your Neanderthal variants and your traits, but it does not explore how other factors may be involved, such as your many other DNA variants, your environment, your lifestyle, even your mad brain. All right, I added that last part. So, this is what it says. You have 2 variants associated with having a worse sense of direction. Now, I can tell you right there, not true. I know always where I am. I can always find north. And I don't have to look at the sun. I don't have to look at buildings around me. I just know. It's like an internal compass. So that is wrong. Also, you have two variants associated with being less likely to have a fear of heights. I believe that to be true. I do not have a fear of heights. Now, as I get older, I do notice that, when you go high up in a building and then you look all the way over the edge, that does make me a little nervous. Probably because I'm smarter now and wiser now than I was when I was young and would do the same thing. You have two variants associated with being a better sprinter than distance runner. That, I think, is probably true. Who wants to run a long ways? It's very hard on your knees. I prefer to go from point A to point B as fast as possible. You have one variant associated with being more likely to have detached earlobes than attached. This is another big thing in DNA sequencing. I don't know why. I don't know what it means. Are these attached or not attached? I don't know. I guess they are not attached. I don't know why it's important. And this is very interesting about Anne Frank. That if you are a child of the 70s or the 80s, it is almost 100% the case that you will have performed in or been a part of or watched a performance of The Diary of Anne Frank on a live stage. Big obsession in the 1980s with performing Anne Frank as a story. I don't know why. It's a wonderful, interesting story about a young woman who was persecuted. And she being the wonderful part of it. And a terrible story in what happened to her and most of her family. So the diary was a big thing. Her father found it. Her entire family perished in the Holocaust. And only her father survived, and he found Anne's diary and edited it heavily and had it published, and became a big hit. So here's some new news about Anne Frank. Oh boy! Thank you for following Movie Trivia. I love that username. A cold case team that combed through evidence for 5 years in a bid to unravel one of World War II's enduring mysteries has reached what it calls the most likely scenario of who betrayed Jewish teenage diarist Anne Frank and her family. This is chilling stuff because we've been wondering since they were killed, who ratted them out? Who told the Germans they were hiding in the attic? And there have been guesses, there have been wonderings, there have been, well, I think this was the person, but we haven't really had die-hard proof. And we're getting closer to it. The answer to that question of who ratted out Anne Frank is outlined in a new book called The Betrayal of Anne Frank, a cold case investigation by Canadian academic and author Rosemary Sullivan, is that it could have been a prominent Jewish notary called Arnold Vandenberg, who disclosed the secret annex hiding place of the Frank family to German occupiers to save his own family from deportation and murder in Nazi concentration camps. We have investigated over 30 suspects in 20 different scenarios, leaving one scenario we like to refer to as the most likely scenario, said filmmaker Thies Beans, who had the idea to put together the cold case team that was led by retired FBI agent Vincent Van Gogh to forensically examine the evidence. The Franks and 4 other Jews hid in the annex, reached by a secret staircase, hidden behind a bookcase, from July 1942 until they were discovered in August of 1944. Almost 2 years. More than 2 years. And then deported to concentration camps. Only Anne's father, Otto Frank, survived the war. Anne and her sister died in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. Anne was 15. The diary Anne wrote while in hiding was published after the war and became a symbol of hope and resilience that has been translated into dozens of languages and read by millions. But the identity of the person who gave away the location of their hiding place has always remained a mystery, despite previous investigations. And if you follow this story, lots of us in junior high and high school read The Diary of Anne Frank. And it's a very arresting and wonderful story. She was a great writer. And you wonder about the monster that went and ratted them out to the Germans. The team's findings suggest that Otto Frank was one of the first to hear about the possible involvement of Vandenberg, a prominent member of the Jewish community in Amsterdam. So Jews ratting out Jews. A brief note, a typed copy of an anonymous tip delivered to Otto Frank after the war, names Vandenberg, who died in 1950, as the person who informed German authorities in Amsterdam where to find the Frank family, the researchers say. The note was an overlooked part of a decades-old Amsterdam police investigation that was reviewed by the team, which used artificial intelligence to analyze and draw links between archives around the world. So mystery solved? We don't know. History would love to ask the guy himself, or ask his descendants, what happened? Tell us what you know. And now it makes you wonder, would they go back if this becomes true and rewrite, add to, put an addendum scene in the Diary of Anne Frank? A scene of Vandenberg saying, "They're up there in the attic. Save my family." And I wonder if his family was saved. Was the family saved? The Rat's family. I don't know why they would be. That's not really how the Germans did business. I think they wanted to know your information. Hello, Dora. Nice to see you. They wanted to know your information at whatever cost it was, and they didn't care who you were. Just as long as you gave them the information that they wanted. And when they were done with you, they were done with you. Here's a fascinating story about the lead poisoning of bald eagles. Now you think, hey, wait a minute, now wait. Bald eagles are the most protected bird in America by a long shot. They were diminishing in their ranks. They're up and coming, and now they're exploding as these wonderful, magnificent birds of America. And they're dying because they're eating lead. A new story, not being shot, actually eating the lead, which is an interesting paradigm for how people also can get poisoned by the food that they eat, willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly. A new study published in the Journal of Wildlife Management finds that despite increasing numbers of bald eagles, poisoning from eating dead carcasses or parts contaminated by lead shot has reduced population growth by 4 to 6% annually in the Northeast. The results could help educate and inform policy on ammunition choices for the hunters. As copper-based ammunition exists, though supplies of all ammunitions have been low lately. And I know hunters, and I know that they're very careful when they go out to shoot game for their family, that they don't want to use, if they can avoid it, lead shot or lead bullets because of this kind of contamination. And if it gets into an organ, it gets into the heart, it gets into the good part of meat, they got to cut out a big part of that meat because it's lead contaminated. You don't want to eat it. But copper bullets are expensive. So if you're out there just shooting around, you're going to shoot the cheapest shot you can find, and it's probably going to be lead. Dora asked, did you see the Bloomberg study on cannabis compound and COVID? I don't know if I did. You can remind us of what the story said. Hopefully the report will add information that compels hunters and conservationists to think about their ammunition choices. The diminished growth rates have the potential to erase cushions that protected populations against unforeseen events have enjoyed so far. And even human health can be negatively affected when bullet fragments inside game species are then consumed either by us or by other animals. Because I do know hunters also who cut out the lead part and they don't want to take it home, so they just cut it out and leave it there on the ground for other people to eat. Other people being animals, scavengers, and they eat it and consume the lead, and then they get sick or they pass it on. When they die, somebody eats them. Many hunters field dress a deer they shot with lead ammunition, leaving contaminated organs where the animal fell. Bald eagles are known to scavenge such carcasses, but they are not the only animals to do so. Trail cameras have shown that owls and crows, as well as mammalian species, including coyotes, foxes, fishers, and bears, also scavenge remains left by hunters. We haven't collected data on these other species in the same way we pay attention to eagles. We are putting eagles out there as poster species for this issue, but they are not the only ones being impacted. Even though eagle numbers increased across the Northeast between 1990 and 2018, the researchers modeling estimated that deaths from ingesting lead depressed the growth rate of bald eagle populations by 4.2% for females and 6.3% for males. So the evidence is there. The eagles are eating lead-infested food. Hi, Dora. Yeah, I see our Autobot will not let you post links. I'm not sure why. I know it's a spam thing, but I don't know if there's a way for me to allow you to post a link. I'll have to investigate that. So thank you for telling us that cannabis compounds prevented COVID-19 infection in a lab study. That's interesting. So they were eating it, I guess? Was it with a vaccine or without a vaccine? That's the question we need to know. And as we think about that, I guess it's time for our first blood pressure break. Back in a moment. And hello, we are back from break. I'm David Boles, here on Boles.tv, BOLES.tv. Email me, David at Boles.tv, if you have a question or concern or something you would like covered here. And on the break, I went into the old Twitter to see if our friend Dora may have sent me the link, and she didn't. But right there on my Twitter page is the story she's talking about. So that's good. And I will show it to you right now. Here's the information. Oh, someone's talking, but we're not going to listen. This is the story from Bloomberg, I guess, that cannabis compounds prevent COVID infection in a lab study. The two compounds commonly found in hemp, called cannabinogenic acid, or I always get this wrong, CBGA, and cannabinolic acid, or CBDA, CBGA or DA, okay, were identified during a chemical screening as having potential to combat coronavirus, researchers from Oregon State University said. Bloomberg's quick take. Quite quickly, we'll be able to move from these preclinical findings to the clinical and demonstrate efficacy in people. That's good news. Cannabis compounds prevent the virus that causes COVID-19 from penetrating healthy human cells, according to the lab study. Well, that is very interesting. New research shows hemp compounds prevent coronavirus from entering to cannabis compounds, so that's everybody reacting to it, but there's the story. Now let's see if I can somehow put the old linko in the old chatto. It should work fine. There we go. Oh, it's very long. I should have shortened it. But it's there. It will work. All that extra junko is just so it can be tracked by Bloomberg where the source material came from, which came from Twitter. Thank you, Nora. That was good. What else is in the news? How about this? Fascinating stuff. Have you heard about these people who have not just a photographic memory and not a photogenic memory, which some people call it, which I find very cute and amusing, even though they don't mean it to be that way. Oh, your memory's so cute, I just want to take a picture of it. But these are people who are terrorized by their memories. Now, some people like Mary Lou Henner, the actress Mary Lou Henner from Taxi, she has some of that, where she can recall what day it was, what day of the week it was, on October 20th, 1972, and what she was doing that day, what the weather was like, and what she was wearing. Okay. She's very proud of it. She'll spout off all those facts to anyone who wants to know, because she loves attention. She's an actress. And there are other people who are not famous and who just want to live a quiet life, who are terrorized by their precocious memory. A memory from which they cannot escape. Now, I know that being able to memorize something quickly is photographic memory. And a lot of actors, especially kid actors who have that talent, work a lot. Scott Baio said that's how he got a lot of his jobs, because he could look at a page from a television show, a script, and he could read it once and memorize it. He knew his lines, he knew everybody else's lines. He was blessed with that ability. And in the 60s and 70s, especially on television, there were some student kids, actors, you couldn't escape from. They acted in every single thing. If they needed a male actor, it was this kid in movies, on TV, on stage. If you needed a female, it's through the movies, TV, on stage. And you're thinking as you're watching it, can they not find someone else who could act in a show other than these small pool of people? Christy McNichol was one of them, and she's wonderful. She's the exception because she was terrific in everything she did. She was always different and interesting. But she worked a lot as a kid. Jodie Foster's another one. She was in every single thing for a long time as a kid actor. And from what I have come to understand, the reason that the pool is so small with these kids is, first of all, they're well behaved, they're very smart, and they have this photographic memory. And that is the most important talent they have when you're on set, along with behaving, because time is money. You got to get in there, you got to say your line perfectly and get off the stage and go home and eat dinner. That's what everybody wants to do. Nobody wants to work. They want to go, do what they have to do, and go home. They don't want to do it 10 times. So these kids who had this ability to remember their lines, to photographically remember what they read, worked. There was a very valuable talent, and their agents would say, look, you hired Jodie Foster, you hired Christy McNichol, they're pros, and they're 8 years old. They go in there, they do their thing, they leave. They're done. Tatum O'Neal was another one. And that's a great talent to have, that you read something and you can remember it. Now, how long you remember it is different. Now, these people we're going to talk about today are in some ways, many ways, tortured by their memory because they cannot escape it. There's one woman we're going to talk about who, this is how she talks. On one side of her, while she's speaking, the days appear on this side all through history, like it's a wheel spinning in front of her. This day, she talks about this day, this date, let's say January 18. And all of the January 18s in her life roll by. And this side of her view is just today and everything that's happened today and repeating over and over and over and over and over and over again. Oh, Dora says she was a child actress. Has a photographic memory. I'm kidding about the child actress part, I think, but you'll have to tell us more about that. That's very interesting, Dora. And a wonderful talent to have. So this young woman, who has this very special kind of memory, when she was 7 years old, her father was offered a job at Columbia Pictures in Los Angeles. He spent a year going back and forth from California to New Jersey, until he and her mother decided to move the family out there in the spring of 74. By July 1 of 1974, when Jill was 8 and a half, they were living in a rented house in Los Angeles, and that was the day Jill says that her brain snapped. Wow. As an 8-year-old, you're aware that something has happened with your brain, and it has snapped. She always had a talent for remembering. She had also always dreaded change. Knowing that after they left New Jersey, nothing could ever be the same, she tried to commit to memory the world she was being ripped away from. Fascinating. She made lists, she took pictures, she kept every artifact, every past note and ticket stub. If this was a conscious effort to train her memory, it worked. Perhaps better than she ever imagined. Price was the first person ever diagnosed with what is now known as highly superior autobiographical memory, or HSAM, a condition she shares with around 60 other people. One of them is Mary Lou Henner. She can remember most of the days of her life as clearly as the rest of us remember the recent past, with a mixture of broad strokes and sharp detail. Now 51, Price remembers the day of the week for every date since 1980. She remembers what she was doing, who she was with, where she was on each of those days. She can actively recall a memory of 20 years ago as easily as a memory of 2 days ago. But her memories are also triggered involuntarily, and that is where this haunting comes from. She can't stop not thinking about these days. Despite their amazing recall, however, there is one way that HSAM subjects are just like everyone else. They are just as prone to memory distortions, the editing, assumption, conflation of time, and other discrepancies that are part and parcel of making a memory. In a 2013 study, 20 HSAM subjects and 38 people with standard memories were asked to participate in a series of tests designed to assess their susceptibility to false memories. HSAM subjects were equally likely as the control group to claim words that had not appeared on a list had appeared. They showed a higher overall propensity to form false memories of a photographic slideshow, and they were equally likely to mistakenly report that they had seen non-existent video footage of the United 93 plane crash on 9/11. Very interesting. And people say, oh, I have a good memory. I remember everything on that day. Well, you do and you don't. The findings suggest that no one, not even a memory wizard, is immune to the reconstructive mechanisms that enable memory distortions. When people with average memory recall an experience, it is formed not only by what they think they know what happened and how they felt at the time, but what they know and feel now. We're pulling together everything in the present.
12 a.m., 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 20.
You have reached.
That's our new music for the day.
Thank you.
It's supposed to be instrumental only. I guess a mechanical voice doesn't count. So we're pulling together everything in the present to come up with an approximation of the past. And that's the same with HSAM people. The findings were not popular, if you can imagine, with some of the HSAM subjects because having accurate memories is central to their identity as a person. They don't care that everyone disremembers things. Not them, even though it's proven that they do disremember. Every memory researcher I've ever spoken to describes our memories as things that define us. They are us. There is a reason that people are more afraid of dementia than cancer. When someone you love dies, you fear the day you will forget how they laughed or the sound of their voice, because you will. It hurts to think of all the wonderful, thrilling, important, terrible, devastating things we've forgotten. But people with HSAM do remember. Besides the scientific questions HSAM raises, then, there is a different kind of question. Would you want a memory like that if you could have it? And Dora says, I never realized it before. Long story, but if I see a number or a name and I remember it, my mother didn't like it, as there are some things she didn't want me to remember. That's a good one. Nothing earth-shattering. It comes very handy at work, though. A lot of my teenage years have been wiped out. Good thing. A good friend who came back into New York life who remembers everything. He's got an amazing memory. One of my favorite lines from The Sopranos, as it was ending, is Tony Soprano yelling and screaming at somebody, saying the worst phrase you can ever utter to somebody is, remember when? And Tony was saying those are the most boring people because they live in the past. Sorry for the typo. I was typing on my little keyboard. No, very clear, Dora. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your story. And even, I rarely travel back home to Nebraska. And the few times I have, you bump into somebody on the street. And it's very strange how one of the first things they say is, oh, I remember when you lost your shoe on the playground in second grade, and you walked around with your sock the rest of the day. And when they start talking to me like that, I look at them and I think, why is that? First of all, something that's stuck in your mind about me, and second of all, why would that be the first thing that you tell me when you see me? That you remember a negative experience that I had where I lost my shoe and my foot was cold all day. Why is that something to remember for you about me? I know we behave badly as kids, but they also do good things. So it's interesting what memories people choose to store and why and when they choose to recall them. And it's usually to control you. Oh, you're a big butt in New York now. Well, I remember when you were walking around shoeless in the 2nd grade. That's who you are. It's like, well, I'm walking down the street. You honked at me and stopped me to tell me this story about me losing my shoe. Why are you talking to me? We call it forgetting, but on the other hand, simple storage of information is stupid. It's just data hoarding. What's the point? You need to extract something useful from it. Then we call it knowledge or wisdom. Memory is not about looking backwards. That is not why we have it. It's there so that your past experiences will make you more adaptive in the here and now and in the future. But when Laporte asked her HSAM subjects in the 2012 study whether they considered their hoard of memories a burden, most said they did not. I'm sure one of them was Mary Lou Henner. She can't stop talking about it. When I first spoke to McGaw, he told me that the real question at the heart of HSAM wasn't why his subjects remember, but why we forget. The overall summary of all of this is that they're bad forgettors. And forgetting is what humans do. Often what we need to do, especially when it comes to trauma. I had a friend of mine. She was a psychologist at Rikers Island in New York City. There for many years, worked with the most difficult people. And she was always fascinated to talk to people who did not have memories of either being attacked or attacking, or was just wiped out. Why? That fascinated her. And the second thing that fascinated her over everything is the idea of how the mind, the brain, slows down traumatic events while they're happening in real time. Time slows down. Like you're in a car crash. And the car crash is happening, and suddenly in your mind something switches, something goes off, and time slows down, and you see individual pieces of glasses coming at you, a glass from the windshield, and the thing exploding, the airbag, you're rolling over, and something that takes 10 seconds in your mind as you're experiencing it in real time is taking 10 minutes. And she wondered all her life why that happens. And we talked about it one time, and I said, I wonder if it's because it's the brain's way of saying, let me slow down time so I can see if I can find a way to get out of this. And then you think about someone coming into your bedroom or your office with a gun, and they're aiming it at people, and instead of shutting down and giving in and falling on the floor, your mind in some people slows things down, like the Matrix, sort of. And you look for an open window. You look for a way out around the door. You look if you can hide in the closet. I think it was a safety precaution to try to find a way out. And then, when the event's over, and if there's been brain trauma, then the whole thing's wiped out. I have no memory of being beaten up or raped. All I know is I woke up and there I was. So the brain is a very interesting, tricky thing. And how things form us, how our experiences form us, and how we choose to remember them or disremember them. The title character in George Louis Borges's story, Funes the Memorious, who acquires a perfect memory as the result of an accident, can no longer sleep because he is kept awake by the 1,000 mundane memories that wind like mosquitoes in his ears. The peculiar mixture of forgetting without remembering. That is a very keel on which our mental ship is built. If we remembered everything, we should on most occasions be as ill off as if we remembered nothing. And there are some people who get caught in a trauma circle, a Mobius strip of trauma, where they cannot stop reliving the terrible events of their day. Here's a link to the full article. It's a fascinating, long, investigative read that you might enjoy. As we talk about memory, it leads us very purely into this next new idea of research going on about dementia. By 2050, not that far away, 25 years away, the number of U.S. adults over 40 living with dementia is projected to rise from 5.2 million people to 10.5 million. The anticipated increase is primarily due to population growth and population aging, although the authors highlight the impact of 4 risk factors for dementia: smoking, obesity, high blood sugar, and low education, and how addressing those factors might improve the forecast. Well, those 4 things, smoking, obesity, high blood sugar, and low education, we are seeing play out in front of us in real time with this COVID-19 pandemic. You know where those people are and what side they're on, and if they're dying or not. The projected increase in the prevalence of dementia in the United States is likely to be accurate. The 4 risk factors the article references are extremely important risk factors to intervene on to attempt to bend the curve away from dementia. Other risk factors, such as hearing loss, midlife hypertension, depression, or social isolation and physical inactivity, also likely play a role. And for 2 years, who in America hasn't had all that going on? Social isolation, a little bit of depression, high blood pressure. Maybe you're losing your hearing a little bit as you age because you've been stuck at home hiding from this coronavirus. But dementia is not a normal part of aging, but a lot of people think it is. Dementia is the loss of cognitive functioning, which includes things like the ability to think, remember, and reason. Remember and reason. To the point where it interferes with a person's daily life. Types of dementia include Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, and Parkinson's disease. The condition becomes more common as people get older. It's estimated that about 1 out of every 3 people over the age of 85 have a little dementia. But it's not normal. It does not have to happen. Signs and symptoms of dementia can include forgetting the names of close family members or friends, getting lost in a familiar neighborhood, and using unusual words to refer to objects. Very interesting. Dementia is more common in women than in men. In 2019, there were more women dementia cases as compared with men, and the analysis suggests that pattern will continue in 2050. While part of that difference can be attributed to women living longer than men, there seems to be other factors at play. There is evidence of sex differences in the biological mechanisms that underlie dementia. It's been suggested that Alzheimer's disease may spread differently in the brains of women than in men, and several genetic risk factors seem related to the disease by sex. That's fascinating. So either you remember everything in your life, or you're not going to remember anything. What a choice. And we try to live in the in-between. Dora says, my friend and I met when we were 10 years old, and he remembers everything on that day, while I forgot. I've known him almost my whole life, so whenever I want to know something, I ask him. Oh, that's good. That's very nice. It's good to have a friend like that. And that is sort of the role that I play. Maybe not anymore because I'm old now, but when I was younger, I remembered everything. Like contracts, if I had collaborators, they say, I don't remember, how we're getting paid, what that clause is, and I would just remember it. And they'd say, why do you remember it? I said, I'm not remembering it, I just know it because I read the contract. Well, so did I. Well, okay, go check if you don't believe me. And sometimes people get very upset with you because you remember things that they really wished you had forgotten, especially in relationships. The old easy argument, you bring up something that happened 10 years ago. I remember when you did this to me. Why did you hang on to that? Let it go. But sometimes you can't let go. You don't want to let go because it's a part of who you are and it's a part of what you believe and how you think and feel. And all that's okay. And now it's that time again. Blood pressure break. See you in a moment. And we are back from break. Nice to have you here today on Boles.tv. I'm David Boles. Nice to see you. We are here Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern. And Fridays around 10:15. Jana Sweeney, my lovely beauty, shows up, gives you a little lesson in hardcore ASL. Saturdays and Sundays, she's here at 11 a.m. to also chat about disability and deafness and what's going on in the world of helping to find disabled people jobs. Well, thinking about memory and learning is really very interesting. And high intelligence, being smart, is not just about that. It's really about memory. It's about recalling things you have learned and using them and applying them in real time. You see that a lot in chess players. The best chess players have wonderful, excellent memories, computer-like memories, where they can go back and remember certain games at certain points at certain times in their life. And I'm reminded, we've discussed this before on this live stream, Jana Marie's beautiful mother, who had a stroke, and she was able to speak and listen, but unable to read. So this is all about mind, all about the memory. However, she could write. She could write Jana letters, but she could not read what she had written. If you spoke to her, like having a conversation or reading the newspaper to her, she couldn't read the newspaper herself, but if you read it to her, she would hear you and understand you and have a chat about it. And that's what's so fascinating. You could read the newspaper to her. She could write down what she learned by you reading the newspaper to her, and then she would look at the paper that she had just written based on what she had heard you say about the news and couldn't read what she wrote. The mind is a tremendously fascinating, awful place. And wonderful as well. What would we be without it? And also on break, I was reminding myself of the book Flowers for Algernon. Do you remember that book? It's a little old, made into a movie starring Cliff Robertson. And it's this is what it is. It's a fascinating story, Flowers for Algernon. The mentally handicapped Charlie Gordon is transformed by a surgery that allows him to become intelligent, which allows him, in my mind, my opinion, to have and hold memories. That's what intelligence is access to memories, access to things that you have learned. There are a lot of bright people out there who are very stupid, and you know what I mean. The short story and later developed novel explores themes about the cycle of life, the limits of science, and whether knowledge is truly more valuable than happiness. There's even a big Wikipedia page on Flowers for Algernon. Won a lot of awards. Algernon is a lab rat who has undergone surgery to increase his intelligence. The story is told in a series of progressive reports written by Charlie Gordon, the first human subject for the surgery, and it touches ethical and moral themes such as the treatment of the mentally disabled. The ideas for Flowers for Algernon developed over 14 years and were inspired by events in Keyes' life. Starting in 1945, the author, Keyes, with a conflict with his parents who were pushing him through a pre-med education despite his desire to pursue a writing career. Keyes felt his education was a driving wedge between himself and his parents, and this led him to wonder what would happen if it were possible to increase a person's intelligence. So it's a really interesting, wonderful story that's also very sad in the end, but I won't ruin it for you because I don't want you to know something that may not apply to you. Although I am tempted to keep scrolling. And then it became the Academy Award-winning film starring Cliff Robertson that was called Charlie. So now we're making a little switch over, talking about the colors of water, which is very interesting. Blue water, if you don't know, is found in lakes and rivers and reservoirs. It's what you see in wetlands, or it can be pumped from below surface aquifers. Available blue water is used for many purposes, including drinking water. It can be used in homes and businesses like beverage manufacturers. It is also used as irrigation water for agriculture. In fact, agriculture uses about 70% of the blue water, which is why researchers are finding ways to reuse water, which we will discuss in a moment. Blue water, which is, I guess, the best water. And you don't think of water as having a color. Everyone thinks, oh, water's clear. And you know, there are some people in the world who don't like to drink water. And I'm not kidding. I love water. People think water doesn't have a taste. And that's why they don't like to drink it. They would rather drink something that has flavor in it. Blue water is recharged by precipitation, either as rainfall or snow melt. But as we build more cities, we put up pavement and buildings, meaning this water then flows into our stormwater systems. Permeable pavement, green roofs, and other solutions can help capture this water and keep it clean for our human use. Then there's green water. I admit I'd never heard of green water before, which is why I thought this was maybe interesting to share. Green water is the water available in the soil for plants and soil microorganisms. It is the water absorbed by roots, used by plants, and released back to the atmosphere through the process of transpiration. Green water can also leave the soil through evaporation or subsurface runoff, but it is considered productive only when it is used for plant transpiration. Various factors determine how much water is needed for a plant to grow: the temperature, amount of sun and wind, and how dry our air is. These factors change the amount of green water a crop needs, and therefore how much crop irrigation might be needed in addition to the rainfall in areas. And coming from the Midwest, from Nebraska, boy oh boy, rain matters, the sun matters, the wind matters. These are important topics. And for many, 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 many years, the one big television station in Nebraska would lead the 10 o'clock news, not the 11 o'clock news that we have in New York. That's 11 o'clock, but back in the Midwest, it's the 10 o'clock news, because that's what time it is in the Midwest. The 10 o'clock news would lead for the first 10 minutes with the weather report. And people from outside who moved to Nebraska, or people who are visiting Nebraska, why is every channel talking about the weather for 10 minutes? I want to know what's going on in the world and what's going on locally. Well, what's going on locally is the weather. The farmers in Nebraska need to know what the weather's going to be tomorrow. And it's 10 o'clock, and they want to know the weather because they're going to turn off the TV and go to bed because they have to get up at 4.